going on, everybody? You are live with Osiris. Welcome to the Author's Lounge. The world is filled with storytellers, and I, along with my guests, are here today in the Author's Lounge to help educate and inspire the young generation of writers and creators. Now, my guests are professionals in publishing, writers from a wide range of formats, and successful entertainers. They will provide beneficial advice on what to do and what not to do on your path to success. So, without further ado, I'll present to you our next guest. Let's go. I have to say that today's guest, you can see her. Most people, I do this introduction, and there's a good chance that many people haven't seen some of the guests that I have. This one is quite unique. She's one of the individuals who's actually inspired me to do this type of a show and to be able to reach out and get people. So it's such a wonderful feeling when I can get someone like her on the show. So let me go ahead and get the introduction rolling for you. Our guest is the host of the award-winning podcast, Creative Penn, which at the time of this recording has reached its 813th episode. She is also a USA Today best-selling author and New York Times best-selling author with nearly 50 published books spanning between two pseudonyms, also known as pen names, and has garnered thousands of book reviews for nearly 20 years. She also has an extensive background as an entrepreneur, public speaker, and a strong online presence with over 185,000 people who follow her across various platforms via social media. So, you know what? I just want to hop right into it. So without further ado, I present to you all the wonderful Miss Joanna Penn. What's going on today?
Well, thank you, Osiris. I love your enthusiasm, and we were just saying we're on different continents,
Yeah.
and I think you're in the coffee phase of the day, and I'm in the later stage of the day.
Oh,
But
yeah.
no, I love your enthusiasm, and it's great to talk to you today.
No, for sure, and thank you for the support you've been showing me over the months, and I love the assignment that you gave me at the beginning. I think it was back in March or maybe it was February when I reached out to you. Despite how busy you are, and despite the amount of people who reach out to you, I reached out to you, and you're so kind and told me, "Hey, look, your show is pretty fresh, so." At least get to this amount and then reach back out to me. And I love the idea because I knew where I had a vision for the show at the beginning, but it morphed into something much greater. And I realized that it's the message behind it of wanting to inspire and educate the young generation that people are gravitating to. And I really love that because I'm able to really go and talk to different people to keep this message going, especially now with artificial intelligence and just a variety of things that's kind of scaring people off. So, one of my first questions I wanted to ask is, as I mentioned in your bio, right, with you being a best-selling author, at what point, right, in the early stages of your career, did you realize the importance of having a voice and the power of your own voice?
Yes, so I think that the difficulty of interviewing me at sort of 20 years in is what you see now is not what was there at the beginning. So
Yeah.
even though, like yourself, I had a YouTube channel in 2008, I had a podcast starting in 2009, I was putting out my first books, I was in the early days of Twitter and Facebook and all back in MySpace days even. And so I didn't know what I was doing. And so
Yeah.
the thing is, the question is like, when did you realize the power of your voice? I totally didn't. I
Yeah.
really didn't. I mean, I'll tell you the reality. The reality was I published my first book. I self-published a book before the Kindle, before digital audio, back in the days when you printed a load of books, had them in your garage, and then tried to sell them. And so I went on YouTube because I needed to sell some books. I had
Yeah.
books in my house, right? And then what happened? So 2006, I was sort of I've really got to learn about selling. And I got on TV, I got on radio, and I didn't really sell any books. And then what happened? 2007, the iPhone, the Kindle, and then podcasting started. So this technological wave, and print on demand, because that wasn't even really possible. Amazon actually bought a print on demand company. Anyone outside of America also couldn't publish on the Kindle initially. So we used a company called Smashwords. And so I guess coming back to your question, I didn't understand about my voice. All I was trying to do was just sell a couple of bloomin' books,
Yeah.
And then what happened? So as I encouraged you, do you keep doing it or not? And this is the test. So anyone can do YouTube videos for a month. Anyone can podcast for a month. Anyone can do like 10, 20 episodes of something. But the question is, are you going to keep going? And when you keep going, you have to enjoy it in some way. So I kept podcasting. 2009, I started. I'm still going in 2025. I've got one of the oldest podcasts around. And it's like, well, I enjoyed that. So in terms of, I didn't know what I was doing in 2009, but by 2014, I actually started. So this was 5 years in. I actually started to realize that I had attracted an audience, some people. And so that was really, I think, 2014. And I left my job in 2011. So I was like, okay, this is actually starting to make a difference. So it definitely took a number of years. And then what happened was one of my listeners emailed me and said, you're always interviewing people, but you're not talking enough about yourself. So that's when I started doing a sort of more personal introduction. And I watched your intro to this channel earlier today, and it's very good. It's a great video. You're like, this is me, and it's very professional. And, you talk about your kids and your wife and all the aspects of your life and the military. And I learned a lot about who you are that way. And I think that is great. But I think we didn't know that earlier on in the early days when YouTube was still like lolcats and, ridiculous stuff like that. And so things have changed. So I guess coming back to the original question, I didn't have a clue. I just got started, and then it kind of emerged over time.
It was like, it was an organic flow. It sounds like with YouTube back in 2008. I remember this clearly because I started in '07, right? But I didn't do anything for YouTube back then that was meant for me to view it as anything other than I just want to put some videos up as a catalog for my friends to see it that live across the world. At the time, I was into online gaming, and I had a community of people who I knew. So when I started YouTube back then, it was, of course, there's always an evolution with technology and with platforms that is utilized. But YouTube back then, wow, it was such a different space, and before algorithms were even a thing, and how you were to garner views, and even if you were to get even a thousand back then, I don't know what the equivalent of today would be, but it was something to behold during those glory days of the old school YouTubes.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there were no influencers,
No.
It was a different time. I mean, if you remember, the iPhone only came out in 2007.
Right.
So most people didn't have a smartphone. We had the Nokia flip phones. Remember them? The little ones. All you could do is text. So it was really when the mobile economy started taking off that really social media, mobile, and then the bandwidth. If you remember 3G, I mean, now we just can't imagine like something like TikTok or YouTube Shorts. I know YouTube Shorts just wasn't possible when that technology wasn't there. So I think the important message here for people listening who want to start something, and maybe they're like, oh, it's too late. Look, it's never too late because things are always changing, and you can start something now, and it doesn't matter what the platform is. What you do have to do is think, okay, I'm going to commit to this. Like, don't try and do too many things. I think that's really important. I know you are guilty of doing too many things.
Yes.
I'm also pretty similar. And you will do better if you try and concentrate. So, like I said, I've had a YouTube channel for a long, long time, but it's never been a focus. It's never been like a massive focus. Whereas audio podcasting has been a focus. Writing books and publishing books has been a focus. So you have to decide where you're going to put the energy that you have, and then, commit to that. Make a real effort, and don't expect to be super famous ever,
Yeah.
but also even get any attention for quite a while. But what I've also discovered, and this is a good tip as well, is that the longer you're around, the more people fall away. And it's the ones who are left standing after an amount of time who are generally making a decent business, decent money on a mature business. So they say most businesses fail within 5 years. It's exactly the same with a YouTube channel, with a podcast, with a social media channel. You have to invest time and effort and have a goal, like a reason to do it as well.
Absolutely. No, that's true. When I'm thinking about like the older days of YouTube and when I was doing it, and once I started to have an idea of what I wanted my YouTube channel to be about, I look back at some of these older videos, like that's 15 years plus old, and look one at the choppy quality of the camera, but also what I sounded like and what I was talking about and what I was wanting to do. And it was always in some form or fashion of entertaining people or helping somebody out. But of course, the message and things kind of dissolve and you don't necessarily know, at least for myself, I didn't necessarily have a direction. It wasn't until quite literally this year, 2025, that it all clicked. And so that was, 18 years ago. Well, I guess technically speaking, 18 years ago, December of 2025 would be 18. But, for lack of better terms, almost 20 years. And I just figured it out. But I also didn't quit. I just kept going. And I think that's to your point, Joanna, about you just have to be consistent, but also be specific. So another thing that I wanted to ask you, right, is so many authors, right, both new and pre-existing in the publishing space don't have an idea why branding yourself is so important. So with that said, when in your career did you truly realize, if you did, right, the importance of building Joanna Penn, not simply as an author, but as a brand?
Yeah, and again, you start off not knowing anything about these words, and I have a degree in theology. It's not in marketing, it's not in business. So again, if people are starting out, you might not really understand brand, and that's absolutely fine. You can just start building and then change along the way. So what happened was I just was me, and then around, I guess it was 2012, I think it was, or 2014, I had written my first 3 novels, also published under Joanna Penn. And then I realized that I actually had 2 audiences. So I had an audience for my fiction, and my fiction as JF Penn, which I then sort of decided on using 2 names at that point. So before then, I'd only been 1 name and 1 brand. And then I realized that at heart, the brand is a promise to the reader. And if you have 2 different promises, then you really need 2 different brands. So a brand isn't like a logo. It's a promise. It's the expectations of the reader. It's how you talk to them. It's the topics you cover. It's your general vibe. It's your book covers. It's the colors you use, the language you use, all of this. So at that point, I split my brand in 2. So I have JF Penn, I have my books and travel podcast, and my YouTube channel, JF Penn Author, which is tiny compared to my the Creative Penn YouTube channel. But it's like I understood that having different audiences, different email lists, different social media, just different expectation. And it also really helped me because when I schedule everything, I use Google Calendar. It's absolutely fantastic. I actually schedule my time as JF Penn time. So like this morning, I've been working on a short story. That's JF Penn time. And then I'm here as really Joanna Penn on your show. So, this is a different brand. If you were interviewing JF Penn, we'd be talking about Gothic architecture or, dark tourism or death culture or, that kind of thing. So it'd be quite different, or books and travel, like my books and travel show. So I think when you're thinking about brand, I think it bubbles up from you. So rather than you forcing yourself into a box, I feel like the people who try and force themselves into a brand, especially as a personality, that's when it goes wrong, because over the years you won't be able to sustain it. So again, you might be able to sustain it for a few months, but it just won't. People aren't stupid. People will see through it,
Yeah.
And you're a upbeat, enthusiastic, proactive, guy.
Oh,
And
thank
that,
you.
yeah, well, that comes through just even with a few videos and your smile and everything. And that's great. That's who you are. And so you're not going to come on. I don't think you're going to come on and talk about really dark stuff and depress people, because that's not what you want to do. So I think that's what we have to think as individuals, as creators. It's like, what do I want people to get from me? What do I want them to feel about me, and how do I portray that in the reality of my content, whether it's books, videos, social media, whatever, and what can I sustain so that it works for me, and also over the longer term. You know, you've got kids. When you started, and you'll keep going, I'm sure. I started when I was in my early 30s, and now I'm 50. So you change, over the time. So you have to have something authentic, because you're going to change and you want people to come with you.
No, that is such wonderful advice and such wonderful words and comments that you were saying. Um, it's so true when I think about just the evolution. When it comes to life, some people hold on to their teenage years, or their early ages. I don't know, maybe their 20s or 30s, and they still hold on to that rather than genuinely coming through with who they are currently, right? And pretty much where I'm getting at is, for me, having children has certainly like changed my perspective on many aspects of life to include what do I want to project into the world. Thankfully, the way I am now, I mean, I haven't always like been this way, but I've generally had this type of energy, where it's pretty much thrown at you all, and it's kind of hard to like, oh goodness, even through recording, it's kind of hard to like not feel it. But there's certainly like different times where I know that if I hadn't had children, I don't know if my imagination with, for example, children's stories would be as direct in its message that I want to convey to other children if I didn't have children of my own. And so, but I really like that point you mentioned as well, because there was a time where I was kind of, I don't know if I should have a different pen name or if I should just keep it under this one, because of my genres of what I was writing with poetry and the content of my poetry, and then my children's stories, and then graphic novels and XYZ was kind of like everywhere. Which I mean, I know now means it was really nowhere, but
Well, no, you can write different genres. Absolutely. But the question is, what's the goal? So if your goal is to be known as a children's author,
yeah,
then focusing on that. But what I would say with a lot of children's authors, as their children grow, they write different stories, because
yes,
they're writing for their children. And then there's a point where then their children are grown away from that, and that person doesn't want to write children's books anymore. So I do see that a lot. So it may be, and that I think the different branding is more about what do you want to do long term. I don't think you need like a separate, although from what I saw of your poetry, it's a little bit darker, isn't it? Like more mindset stuff.
it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I can see that perhaps that's a bit different, although these days it's fine to talk about mindset with children and depression and stuff with children.
for
But I
sure.
think, yeah, I mean, if you were writing, let's say you decided later with your military background to be like a military sci-fi thriller writer or something, that might be a good different name, because that doesn't fit with your children's books. So yeah, I think we have to think about the target market and how we can put that brand out there. And also, I feel like your Osiris, we're live with Osiris energy would be very different to something like a military sci-fi thriller
For sure.
energy. So you might then be more like me, because Joanna Penn is very upbeat too.
Yeah.
But JF Penn is that darker side of me, that shadow side of me. And I don't know, you might go that way at some point.
I like the idea of it, about that as well. I like that, because some of the content, like for me, I don't, me and my truth, I know I'm not somebody who speaks in a way that is like degrading to people, or condescending, or I also don't have like a heavy uses of profanity in my material either, because I don't generally speak like that to people. But so I know that if I were to all of a sudden start doing that, and it'd just be weird for me. But anyway, like to kind of get back on point, because there was one of these questions I wanted to ask you regarding the genres, right? So, given the quality, or more, well, not just the quality, but also the quantity of your books that you've published, and you've published in multiple genres, which of those genres have you found audiences gravitating towards to more? And also, in that gravitation, how has your marketing strategy differed from one genre to the next?
Yeah, again, it's the question is based upon really caring about that.
Yeah.
But so again, there are two different ways of approaching what we write. One
Mhm.
is to write to market and to specifically write something that you know will sell to a group of people. And the other one is to write what bubbles up from inside. So I'm an intuitive writer and I'm a discovery writer, which Americans sometimes call pantsing. I don't call it pantsing. We call it discovery writing here in England.
Uh-huh.
But basically, I write what I feel is the thing I want to write.
Mhm.
And so I don't necessarily I don't write to market, certainly not for my fiction. For my non-fiction, I have written, when I wrote How to Write a Novel, it was clearly for my audience of people who wanted to know how to write a novel. So in that sense, but I think in terms of different marketing, I have really done the same things for 20 years, which is I have always had an email list. So that's like baseline number one. And at the back of every book, you can sign up and get a free ebook. So I've always had email marketing, and I email every couple of weeks, at least once a month, to my list. So
Good
that's
to know.
one. That's one thing. Then books in a series, I guess that would be another thing. So my Arcane Thriller series, which is kind of Dan Brown, and by the way, I also don't have profanity in my books or sex or super graphic violence. I have body count, but not like no torture porn or anything. But yes, so books in a series. So 13 books in my Arcane Thriller series, and then like 15 in my non-fiction books for authors and all that kind of thing. That's a good marketing tactic, is to always have books in a series. Then you can promote the first book in a series, and it will bring people through the rest of them. But then I think... And then one other thing, and for me, that one other thing really is podcasting. So that's been my main focus, because you have to attract people to you somehow. They have to find you somehow. Yeah. And then we all do paid ads. So that paid ads are kind of a necessity these days. But the reality is you sell most books on the books you're advertising. Yeah. So that's like, okay. And there are books I have that are standalone. So on the video, if you're behind me, you can see there my book Pilgrimage. Yep. That's my midlife memoir. It's a standalone memoir called Pilgrimage. It's not something that's going to sell a gazillion copies. I mean, it really isn't. But the people who love that book. And so I don't really think, how am I going to knock it out the park every time? I know some people do, but I just can't create like that. And I feel like for me, I've written, as you mentioned, almost 50 books over 20 years. So it is only like, many of them are novellas, shorter nonfiction. So it's like 2 books a year, 2.25 books a year. That's not actually a ton when you're full time. Some people, write a book a month. So I think if you want a long-term career, for me, it's really been about what do I want to put out there, and then attracting people to that over time. The other thing is the independent author business model is more about, backlist. Yeah. So I put out a new book, but all the other books are still selling. So I'm not so concerned about the new one. I'm concerned about all the other ones. So yeah, it's a very nuanced question. And again, it differs where you are in your career. Obviously, when you only have one book, it's the most important thing. but by the time you have a lot more, they're kind of my employees. So I sort of send them out to work for me.
Oh, yes. And you have the one thing, well, there's many, right? But one of the things that I really appreciate about about individuals such as yourself is that there's an unequivocal, unimaginable, almost diabolical obsession with continuing to just put out something without stagnating. Like there's some people who say, "Oh, you know what? I was successful. I did my thing. Let me ride into the sunset." Or even one hit, two hits, three hits. Yeah, I think I'm done. I think I'm going to go ahead and relax. But no, I see the books behind you. I see the episode count that you have on your podcast. I see that you still do podcast interviews. You still keep going even after 20 years or even nearly 20 years, right? And that there's something to be said about individuals who have just that intrinsic motivation, that drive to just keep going. So on that topic, regarding your podcast that you were speaking about, right? The Creative Penn, it has been around for a while. So, what difference would you say, or how much different is the podcast in 2025 versus 2008?
Yeah, I started in March 2009, the podcast.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, no,
2009. Yeah.
it's only a few months. Well, when I started podcasting, it was the first podcast, which is I've left up everything because I feel it's important. So the very first episode, I phoned up someone on a phone, a landline phone, and put it on speakerphone and held a recorder next to it and recorded the conversation. So it's terrible. It's terrible. I also didn't really understand interviewing. So I was super, super nervous. My voice is much younger, which is always funny when you realize your voice ages over time. But, and again, it was all about the guest. So this is something I've also learned over the years. And I hope if you don't know it already, then I'll tell you now, which is people are here for you. People are here for the host. They might have popped in here and they're like, oh yeah, she's whatever, but I'm here for Osiris. Mm-hmm. And that is so important. So whoever you're interviewing, there might be some good points with that person. You're trying to help your audience by sharing useful things, but it still has to come back to you. And you have to be the one to draw out the things that your audience will care about, that you care about. And so I think I didn't really realize that at the beginning. Also, to be frank, I didn't have a clue about writing. I didn't have a clue about author business. I mean, there wasn't much author business going on at the time. It was still very traditional publishing. Being self-published was very a bad thing. There was a huge stigma around it back then. So much has changed. And then, as I mentioned, the technology. So from there, I moved into Skype. So Skype was obviously a godsend. And crazily, Skype is now finished. So that's like a bit of a shock. And then obviously we all moved on to Zoom and now Riverside and all these. So the technology's changed, but my confidence has changed. And this is another tip for people. If you want to do video, it takes some learning. If you want to do audio, it takes some learning. All of this takes some learning. Don't expect that you can just turn on a camera or turn on a recording and do well. You have to practice and it takes time. So if I listen to that first episode, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I started anyway. And then over the years, I've just, I think I've become a better interviewer.
For sure.
Oh yeah, I've understood a lot more about how these things work. I try and make sure and focus on like giving tips for people and just become more confident also in sharing about myself and the things that I am interested in. And, if people don't want to listen to us, they've already gone. And you have to trust that too. You have to think, look, if people arrive and even if they see us, right, our faces, you and me, if they don't want this conversation, they left already. Right. And so I think in the beginning I was like, oh, how can I make people like me? How can I make them like me? And now I'm like, no, you just put stuff out there as yourself and some people will stay and they're your people.
Exactly that thought. Just being authentic to who you are, to not even specifically to your brand, but just to who you are as a person, and allowing that. Oh, yes, indeed, and even that was difficult. Like you earlier, and you had mentioned about how it was quite difficult. And I know we're kind of got about little under 10 minutes left, so forgive me. So I'll ask you maybe like three or four more of the
Yeah,
questions
yeah.
that we talked about. But I just wanted to say that being able to shine through who you are as a person, speaking true to who you are as a person, is it's so paramount in the growth of you as an individual. Many people see people such as yourself. They may look at me. They may look at others. I got a good buddy of mine, Dale L. Roberts, who I know that you have. Man,
He's
that's a good
great.
dude.
Yeah, he's another very enthusiastic person.
Yeah, that's my man right there. We somehow naturally just became really good friends, and just with our shared love for professional wrestling, it's crazy. But that's my guy right there. Yeah, he's a wonderful dude. But to get back on topic, I wanted to say that um with all of that, I do find it quite important to be able to know who you are as a person. But for you, right, I had talked about that whole unequivocal, almost diabolical type of
Oh, the
drive,
work ethic.
the work ethic. Absolutely, yes. How have you sustained that for so many years? That is hard to do, but you've done it at such a high level consistently, even when you started. And it may at the time be viewed as, oh, people don't know me, but that drive in those earlier videos is still present even when I'm talking to you. So how have you sustained that for such a continued, I guess, just for such a long period of time?
Yeah, well, I hate to break it to you, but I don't have great discipline at
Oh
all.
no.
What I do have is this is what I love doing. And
Hmm.
this is the whole point. It's like you
Yeah.
cannot sustain something you hate. So the reason I became a writer is because I used to work in IT. I used to implement accounts payable software,
Hmm.
very highly paid and desperately miserable. And I was crying all the time and it was awful. And I used to do that every day. I did that every work day for 13 years. So I did my job and I got paid for my job and I hated it. So every day that I'm writing, every day that I'm podcasting, every day that I can live a creative career is a good one.
Yeah.
So the reason I've continued is because I really truly love it. So
Hmm.
if you compare your YouTube channel to my YouTube channel, much of mine is audio only
Hmm.
because I don't particularly love video. And I don't watch video. I listen to a lot of audio.
Hmm.
So I chose to go heavily into audio and pull away from the things that I didn't want to sustain. Something that I have stopped doing is I used to blog. So blogging was really a thing back in 2005, 6.
Hmm.
And then about 5 years ago, I stopped blogging. I still podcast, but I don't blog because there were a lot of people who cover that better than me. So I stopped that. I was hugely into Twitter back in the day, and I still do use X, but not in the same way. I'm really pulling away from social media. So I used to do a lot of professional speaking. I've pulled away from that. I used to have courses. I've pulled away from that. So what you're seeing is the things that I have kept doing that I love, which is
Hmm.
writing books and podcasting
Yes.
and coming on as a guest, trying to help your audience too. But mainly I do the things that I can sustain. And so that's the ticket. It's not discipline, forcing yourself to do the stuff that you don't want to do. It's because you enjoy it and you love it and you pick that over something else. And a tip for you and other people who do too much is
Yeah.
you might enjoy lots of things, so you're going to have to winnow that down, because at some point you will get burned out,
Yeah.
or your kids need you or whatever, and you're like, what can I stop doing? And what I feel like at the beginning of your career, you have to say yes to so much. You have to keep saying yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes, yes, yes. And then at some point you have to start saying no. No, 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 no. And like
Yeah.
I said no to you the first time you pitched me, because I couldn't necessarily trust you would still be around
Yeah.
in a few months, but you are. And so saying no is hard, but you have to do it to protect your time in order to create the things you want to, which for me is mainly my books. So yes, please don't suggest that I have great discipline, because it's
Oh,
more
no.
about doing the things I love. Also, I
For
should
sure.
also say this is my job. So, you're in the military. That is your number one job, I presume.
Hmm.
And so you do that and you get paid for that. So I'm an author, I'm a podcaster, and I get paid for that by my audience. So that is also part of it. But I wouldn't do it if I absolutely hated it. There are easier ways to make a living.
No, for sure. And I think that was a kind of the dilemma that I faced was that I love what what the military has done for me and what it has represented. And in my time in the service, I have I have learned that my love and my desire for what I'm doing right now, and also writing is where my heart truly is. And trying to find a balance between that and taking care of my children, and taking care of helping serve a country and also being able to like service the people through my material has been it's taken some time to get. That's part of the reason why, like with my original website with the OsirisInkPublishing.com, why it's not it's down, because I realized, and I had to this kind guy. He was such a nice individual. I think he lived somewhere in Pakistan. He was so looking forward to work with me. I had helped out some teenagers with my indie publishing house, helped them get bestseller status on Amazon and sell many books and reach a demographic and help them with X, Y, and Z. He was so excited to come on board, and I was excited to have him. But I started to realize that I was my attention span was everywhere, and it wasn't necessarily even focused on myself, which is fine. I had launched a children's book back in February, but because I was promoting a couple of teenage authors in January and in March, I
Mm.
didn't even promote anything regarding my own stuff. And that to me that was fine. But I realized as time progressed that I'm burning out,
Mm.
and I'm burning out quick. And I need to pull back because at that point I'm not even writing as much, which is what got me into doing this to begin with. I've been writing since I was a child, and I still write, and it can just be tricky. So I do love the idea that you're talking about, Joanna, about narrowing it down and
Mm.
sustaining what you can sustain, and also focusing on what you love to do. And if you can also somehow turn what you love into some sort of a lucrative business, then you're set. And me, my initial fear came from having a family, but also knowing I love this, but then being strategic and dang it, if I didn't have children, I'd probably be all blazing in. Let's go, let's do it. Let's do X, Y, and Z. But it can be tricky. But I
And also, I want to encourage you too, because your kids are still young, right?
yes,
Yeah. And in reality, the years pass. And while your kids are stuff that you're doing with your kids and with your younger self, because the writing is still there for you. And as the years pass, you can also change your direction. So I think that's something that's so important. We don't realise at the time the stage of life we're in. And we have to have old people who say to us, you know, make the most of this time now, Osiris, and
hmm
in the future, maybe you will have a publishing house in the future. You don't have to do it all right now. So, you
right.
know, focus on what brings you, you know, that bit of joy you need to keep for you, and then the bit that you have for your family and for your job and your country, and, you know, not trying to serve the whole world at the same time.
Yes, not trying to serve the whole world at the same time
You were.
is yeah. Oh gosh, yes, I sure was. Even when I look back at that video that you had watched, my introduction video, um, and I listened to, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm doing a lot, and
Yeah,
I'm doing a
I was like,
lot.
oh my goodness.
I'm like, I should probably re-record the video and say, "Hi, my name is Osiris, and I'm a dad."
Well, I think you do say I'm a dad and I'm a brother and I'm a husband. And
Yep. I do this. I write a couple of books. I do a podcast. Yes, but okay. Well, I know I'm at the mark of the 45-minute mark that we agreed to. So I want to say first, thank you so much for agreeing to come on board, for giving me your time, for the nuggets that you shared into this. Is there any thing that you could say to anybody who is just starting out and they're wanting to get their foot in the door, not with anything else other than, hey, they want to become a writer or they want to do podcasting like we do? Like, what's your advice for them? And that'd be my final question.
yeah, well, I think as we said earlier, it's never too late. So wherever you are in the world and in your career, you can start now. I think I also wanted to make a point about technology because when I started, I could not have the career I have today without the technological wave that started as I started. So 2007, the iPhone and the Kindle. And I know you mentioned at the beginning the kind of scary AI stuff, but in my eyes, this is the most exciting exciting time. I haven't been this excited since the beginning, when it was like, oh my goodness, we are so early, this is amazing. So personally, I think now is a great time to start surfing the next wave of technological change. So use the tools that are coming along now that lots of people can't use, don't know how to use, are scared of, to help you along your way, to create more, to write more or do more videos. Oh, in fact, this morning I was playing with Midjourney's video creator tool, animating my book covers. For that I was having so much fun. Fun is really important. So yeah, but if you are, whoever you are, you're just starting out, just do what makes you feel happy creatively. I think we all need that creative outlet, and do that first before you think about monetizing. The monetizing will have to come later. Like, it took me 5 years of the side hustle before I made, really any money, and like a decade before it was decent. So I think just focus on the happiness and the joy of creation first, whatever that means to you, and then think about the rest of it later. But do create.
Do create. Yes, do create. That speaks to just the love that you have to have for yourself. So, hey, on that note, everybody, I want to say thank you all so much for coming by, for sitting through it if you sat through the episode, and just for always supporting myself. For Joanna, thank you so much for coming on board and for just providing your time in the middle of your busy day. I see the books. I know your hustle, so I'm going to get out of your way now. So anyway, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to tune in to today's episode with myself and Joanna Penn. JF Penn in the back if you want some of her books. I don't know, go to her website. I'll have it linked in the description if you want to take a look at her work or listen to her podcast. And on that note, you all take care, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks.